All right, Bethany, if you're ready to kick it off.
Yeah, of course. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar hosted in partnership with Texas Association of School Administrators. My name is Bethany, and I'm part of the K-12 Insight team. Before we get started, I just wanted to note a few housekeeping items. Today's session is being recorded, and we'll share the recording with all registrants within the next 2 business days. We encourage you all to submit questions at any point using the Zoom Q&A feature, but we will hold questions until the end just to give enough time to cover them thoroughly. We are so excited to have 2 fantastic speakers with us today, Hillary Robbins, Regional Partnerships Director at K-12 Insight, and Dr. Jennifer Collins, Deputy Superintendent at Arlington Independent School District in Texas. And with that, I'll hand things over to Hillary to get us started.
Wonderful. Like Bethany mentioned, we are so excited to be able to speak with you today. So I am from K-12 Insight, but I'm actually located in Justin, Texas. Although today I'm coming to you live from Orlando, Florida. And I know we've got a majority of our Texas attendees here, but maybe some other people from across different states as well. So it's really my pleasure to be able to welcome you to today's session is focusing on modernizing our customer service in K-12 schools. I think for so long, customer service has been something foreign. And now with the school choice movement and the opportunities for our families to go elsewhere, it's really become the emphasis of what we need to do to focus on. So I'm excited to be kind of talking with you today and joined by Dr. Jennifer Collins, who's the Deputy Superintendent of Arlington ISD. I've had the pleasure of working with her this past year, but she brings a wealth of experience from teaching and curriculum to senior administration roles from other districts, including Highland Park, Northwest, and 18 years at Leander ISD, and is now a valued K-12 Insight partner. Since July of 2024, she's led transformative initiatives at Arlington ISD, and that is really driving operational change that benefits families, staff, and the wider community. And so I'm so excited to really have this conversation, to have her tell her story today. So thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Collins.
Thanks, Hillary. Super excited to get to be here. So I'll start off by just talking a little bit about Arlington for those of you that aren't familiar with us. So if you know the Dallas Cowboys or the Texas Rangers, they are literally across the street from our administration building here in Arlington. I was just looking at some of our enrollment data. We're at about 51.5 students right now, and we do have 76 campuses in Arlington. We are smack dab in the middle of the Metroplex. So whenever I look out my window, I see Dallas, the skyline there. And when we look out of the superintendent's window, he sees the Fort Worth skyline. So it's just amazing to be right here in the middle of the Metroplex. In Arlington, we have about 85% of our students who represent minority populations, and over 75% of our students are economically disadvantaged. Just this spring, Arlington was identified nationally as the 4th most diverse city in the United States of America. And so that's not just about how many languages are spoken, but it's about economics, it's about college degrees and experiences, right? Like it's about a lot of different things, but it's so great to be in a very diverse community. But that diversity means that the customer service that we provide needs to also be diverse. And so we do have, as a part of our strategic plan, a goal to provide equitable accessibility to all of our stakeholders. And that can be a challenge whenever we're thinking about different modes that people are using to try to reach out to the district, right? So some want to give us a phone call, some at late hours in the evening or frantically searching our website for information, emails, lots of different ways that people are trying to get in touch with us. But what we really want to do is to develop some genuine partnerships with our families and not just answer their questions, but to make sure that they have the information that they need, because all of our families matter to us, of course, here in Arlington. So a few big challenges in front of us here in Arlington. So like many school districts across the state, we are addressing declining enrollment in an increasingly competitive market. So Arlington has been losing about 1,000 students a year for the last 10 years. So this, even prior to the pandemic, we started to see declining enrollment here in Arlington. Arlington, I would say, peaked 15, 20 years ago whenever the Metroplex was growing here. And now, like many urban areas, you're starting to see the growth on the outskirts of those big cities. So we have been losing students. Our because we have so many different choices here in the Arlington area, our approach to customer service has to evolve. It has to look different. We have to think about marketing differently and providing different kinds of customer service. Secondly, so that idea of modernizing our operations to deliver exceptional experiences across all of our departments. So thinking about multilingual needs of our families, multi-channel, like we were talking about earlier, what are the different ways people are trying to reach out to us and get supports. And then, we have to be prompt in how we respond back to people. I am someone who does not monitor my email all day long because I'm in and out of meetings all day long, but sometimes people feel like if they don't get an immediate response that we don't care about them. And so what are the different ways that we can let prompt responses be a part of the work that we're doing? And then leveraging data to boost our efficiency, our transparency, and our response times. We are a continuous improvement district, and so we want to look at the data to make sure that we're getting better and better. And I have seen from my time in Leander how K-12 Insight and the Let's Talk platform specifically help us use data to improve the services that we're providing to our community. So we'll talk a little bit more about that this afternoon. And then fourth, earning that leadership buy-in to drive momentum and sustained success. So when I joined Arlington about a little over a year ago, we knew that we had to partner with our staff to identify gaps to rapidly improve. We have a lot of progress that needs to be made here in this district as we think about student success and customer service. And it's not just about being innovative, it's about really having some momentum and sustaining some change in our system.
I love that. Thanks for sharing that overview. You touched on so many big things that I think so many of our audience can resonate with. I mentioned I'm here in Orlando right now, but even in Florida and Texas, enrollment is a key challenge I think everybody is really facing right now, state to state, when I speak with district leaders. So, post-COVID, there's been a lot of organizations that can promise big solutions to school districts. I know you highlighted that you've worked with us previously in Leander, but can you speak to why did Arlington choose to work again with K-12 Insight?
Yeah, so number one, we did have great customer service with K-12 Insight. So that was something that we had in our minds. We knew that it was a company that would really be able to support us to make sustainable change. But I think that this graphic is interesting as we think about before K-12 Insight, and I think that we can probably all relate. So urgent messages get missed, right? That is a reality of the job in our complex systems. We have about 8,000 staff members here at Arlington ISD. And so just the email chains that go back and forth because I'm looking for the right person to be able to help someone, it gets confusing and things get lost. Thinking about missing student information. We were talking with principals just this week about ensuring that contact information for parents is right and are their cell phone numbers still up to date, and all of those kinds of things. When information is missing, that makes it complicated for us to reply back and to be good providers. Requests go missing, uneven workloads, lack of historical context. So as someone who has been in the district for just a little over a year, lack of historical context is real. And so I can answer a question based on what I know, but oftentimes what I'm having to do in my job right now is to loop other people in. And so doing that takes time and things get lost because I punt it to someone to get some more information and then maybe I hear back or maybe I don't, right? And sticky notes, I'm a sticky note girl. I have sticky notes all over the place. That's not really a good system for tracking systems. And then no way of tracking service quality. And so what K-12 Insight allows us to do is to streamline all of that and for us to get feedback from our stakeholders about, are we meeting their needs moving forward. So Dr. Smith joined the Arlington ISD team probably about 18 months ago. And he and I both in Leander had used this tool, and we saw firsthand how K-12 Insight and Let's Talk can make a difference for providing that customer service. And so then we really wanted to work alongside our staff to gain a deep understanding and to align this with our goals. So one of our goals currently in Arlington ISD, we have 5 priorities, and one of them is around marketing and engagement. And so using K-12 Insight to help with marketing and engagement and making sure that we're engaging people in our community. But a second one is about culture. And so are we building and sustaining the culture that we want to have here in the district? And so we see really specific alignment as we build those systems. I would say that oftentimes what I've seen is our technology leaders, as we try to implement solutions, get super critical as we are trying to implement something that involves technology. Like it's hard on the back end for our technology leaders. And what I heard over and over and over again over the last 8 months is that K-12 Insight did an amazing job of partnering with our technology team to make things easy for them. And they kept everything on track according to the timelines and the calendars that we had established, which is not always what you hear. And so for me, when our assistant superintendent for technology came back and said, I am so impressed with everything we're getting from Let's Talk, I was like, that's a win, right? Like that really is being a strategic partner for us and helping us, with that strategic vision and to sustain where we're headed.
That's so great to hear. And especially to have that buy-in from your technology team is so huge because in today's environment, we're really having to do more with less. And a lot of our staff is being tied down with other things. So it can sometimes be daunting for some teams to think about, oh, is this another thing on my plate to have to lift and launch? And so the fact that our teams were able to kind of work with your teams to take a large load off their plate was really helpful.
Yeah.
So kind of shifting, I know you talked about your experience at Leander, but in a large district like yours, you have to be really intentional about not overwhelming your staff, not overwhelming your people. So you had all hands on deck from the start, but I want to know more about how did you know about your approach to rolling out Let's Talk in a strategic manner to be really successful for your stakeholders?
Yeah, so I think the number one piece were the priorities that I talked about earlier, right? So knowing that culture was a priority for the district and knowing that marketing and engagement was something that we had to continually improve, like everyone was on the same page with, yeah, those are metrics that we need to move. And so knowing that we're all shooting for those improvements allowed us then to have intentional conversations. Number one, we started with our senior staff team and we helped them to catch a vision of what Let's Talk would offer. Hillary came in and did a presentation with our senior staff team in maybe January of this year so that they could see what Let's Talk had to offer. And in that senior staff meeting, you started to see light bulbs go off with some of our chiefs and some of our assistant superintendents with, I see how this might be able to work. And so where we decided to start was with our transportation team. So you'll see that there in the middle of the graphic, because we thought if we can start something with transportation late spring and through the summer, that would allow us, number one, to target an area where we know we need improvement, right? Transportation communication is very complicated. And when you're trying to move 52,000 students around the district, there are a lot of people who are trying to make phone calls and send emails, and it just happens over and over and over again. So how can we improve that for our teams? And so our transportation team, what we decided is let's start with summer school. Let's start when there's a smaller number of students that are utilizing transportation, and let's drop some tools for our parents and for our community so that they can begin to use it and we can practice and see what it's like, and we can get some buy-in from people within our system. And I would say that, the work up front to get it going, we tweaked along the way, but the reception has been overwhelmingly positive from our transportation team with how streamlined the communication has been. And then we decided to launch some work with our registration and enrollment processes in the summer. For those of you that are in public school systems here in Texas, like our campus is shut down for a few weeks in the summer. But at the same time, we're pushing out emails or putting things on social media saying, all right, it's time to register your kid. And so if I'm a mom and I have a question about how to do something, sometimes there's nobody to get a hold of and I don't know who to contact at the district office. And so what I'm doing is I'm leaving voicemails at my kid's school, or I'm sending emails to people that are off contract for a little bit of time. Our elementary campuses are typically closed for a longer period of time in the summer than our secondary campuses. And it's those elementary parents that are doing this for the first time, right, that have the most questions. And so we opened up some opportunities to use Let's Talk through that process so that instead of people calling and leaving voicemails over and over or sending lots and lots of emails, there was a way for them to get immediate response in the summer. So that went really well. And then just in the last week or so, we've launched a big central office rollout where we're going to try to bring in additional departments moving forward.
I love that. I think when you talk about like the schools being closed, that's an opportunity to create those frustrating experiences at each one of those pieces and those touch points there. So I love that you had that in mind to really provide that seamless experience with that to make sure that you're getting them their support whenever schools are not open or there's not staff there. So I want to dig into a little bit more about transportation. So I think that was really methodical for you guys to really think about starting off small at a smaller volume with summer school. So when you started off with transportation, can you talk to me a little bit about like, what did your end goal look like and how has this been able to really be successful for that team to get started there?
Yeah, so when I first started in Arlington last July, I heard that the first few weeks of school were really, really tricky with transportation here in Arlington. And so I just volunteered to have my admin assistant help out, because we knew that people would be calling like crazy. And so she just, participated and had calls roll over to her at the beginning of the year last year. And, I'm new. I don't know, what all is happening here in Arlington. What I do know is that her phone is ringing off the hook all day long, which means there are lots of people in line waiting to talk to someone. And what I experienced from her is that she would talk to a lot of people who were just confirming, is my child's name on your list somewhere that you're going to get back with me, even if it's in a couple of days, right? They're just trying to confirm, am I still on your radar? Knowing that we might not have all of the answers. And so in implementing Let's Talk, our goal was that number one, people could communicate once and they would know for sure that they're on the radar and that we're going to get back to them. And number two, that we've got a plan to be able to get back with them really, really intentionally and quickly. And so that then in the end, we're going to ask them, how did this experience go for you? And we're going to get feedback from them because it was very evident a year ago when people were calling over and over and over again. And my admin assistant would, talk to the same people multiple times. They were not happy, right? Like they're just looking for help. And so whatever we could do to make this an easier burden for our transportation team and for our families was kind of what we were trying to solve.
Yeah, I love that. And I know that it's really been helping kind of reduce that staff workload of being able to kind of triage that more efficiently, which then kind of, I think you alluded to earlier about the registration. I think I was really surprised to see in registration that this was actually your more frequent data. And I know that this is your top strategic priority to really do that. But same thing here. I I love that you have this chatbot on your site to be able to have a single place for people to go. Um, what have you heard about the feedback around this, especially in both transportation and in registration?
Yeah, so our feedback is that people are able to get answers so much more quickly and they can get them at any time of the day. I'm a working mom, and so whenever I go home and I'm looking at my own kids' papers that I have to fill out or things that need to be done for them as students, I'm doing those things after hours. I'm not doing them during the workday, and we know that that's the case for so many of our family members. And so if I'm needing to send a message about my kid left their lunchbox on the bus, how can they get their lunchbox back? Or if I'm trying to, upload their birth certificate and I can't figure out how to do an upload because all I have is a cell phone and I've taken a picture and I'm not sure what to do next. Like all of those questions can be answered really at any time of the day with the way that we set up the chatbot. And even if they're not getting the answer to their specific question, they're hearing feedback immediately. Thank you for reaching out to Arlington ISD. This is, been forwarded to whatever team, and we will get back with you within the next 24 hours, right? They know that they're on somebody's radar and that it's not just something floating around in space.
And most importantly, they know that their email hasn't gone in a black hole or dark hole.
That's right.
They've got a copy
That's
of that.
for sure.
Yeah, I love that. I think you highlighted earlier about like the technology and them being really on board. And so one of the things that we have also started to talk about with technology is by integrating some of those phone calls and text messages. And so I know that that's an area to enhance with your transportation team. So, is that a priority for where you feel like it would be easier to really kind of see all the data in one platform? Or talk to me a little bit about like why technology was so important about bringing in all those different communication channels.
Yeah, I think it's about getting a picture of who's calling us and what they're needing. When we were doing our training last week with Let's Talk and just giving everybody a broad overview, one of the things that would get a gasp from the audience every single training was this number that would pop up next to somebody's name that might say 212. Well, that was the number of interactions that they had had with the district. And you could click on that and see what are all the different questions that they've been asking, right? Like, it's interesting to think about, is this somebody who never reaches out, or is this somebody who reaches out frequently? And if they are reaching out frequently, what are the different things that they're needing to know and understand? And so being able to put our phone calls into that system as well, we just felt like would be super important, because we know, and I'm guilty of this, I'm sure we all are, that if I don't get an answer via email, maybe then I'm going to make a phone call, or then I'm going to go straight to the board, or whatever the things are that people are frustrated about, their different strategies. And so if we can collapse all of those into one platform instead of having things live in different places, it just makes a lot of sense.
That helps you as district leaders as well too, to kind of get a clear picture, so you're not having to play catch up on like who was the last person that said this, or like you mentioned earlier about the sticky notes, but I'm guilty of that myself. So I think when you have all of these different things streamlined in one location, data is one of the big things that we as district leaders always talk about to drive things further. So how has this data dashboard been able to really help you kind of make changes, make enhancements? Like, what does this dashboard mean to you in terms of driving change in Arlington ISD?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about each of the different colors. So we'll start with the blue on the top left. So real-time customer experience score. So kind of like when I take my car in to get serviced and then I leave, they send me a text message that says, how was your service today? Rate us on a scale of 1 to 10, right? So it's that same kind of feedback that we're receiving. Every interaction that we have, they receive an opportunity to provide us feedback on the service that we provided to them. The idea of negative experiences. And so we know that some experiences will be positive and some will be negative. And so being able to keep an eye specifically on the negative experiences, because are there trends in that data? Are there some specific departments that continue to experience negative feedback? And if so, what are the things that we need to be aware of there? In the yellow box on the bottom left, the average age of the dialogue. If we make a commitment to our community and we say to them in that automatic email that they get back, someone will get back with you in the next 48 business hours, or in the next 2 business days, and it's been 6 days, that's not okay, right? If we tell people we're going to get back with them, we need to get back with them. Even if it's, I'm checking into this for you, there are ways in the system that it will kind of pause the interaction because you're searching for more information. And so keeping an eye on that dialogue age is super important. And then the number of unanswered critical dialogues, right? And so if something is going unanswered, why is something going unanswered? And it just allows us as leaders to ask better questions of our team about what is it that causes something just to continue to hang out there.
Yeah, you bring up a good point too about really keeping an eye and a pulse on that average response time, because in today's generation we have like this Amazon level expectation of really wanting a response in a timely manner. And so it's interesting that more than 70% of parents really do expect that response within 24 hours. So I love that you guys are utilizing this dashboard to kind of really keep an eye and a pulse of giving that promise of your good customer service in the district. So this is the fictitious data here of what we have in our demo account, but I really wanted to highlight and show some real live data that you were able to gather from your registration team. And so when I see this, I see just huge celebrations, because like I said, I was really impressed that I thought transportation would have a lot more volume, and really it was registration that came in. So I think for me to see from the current school year data, to see also this response time and this amount of volume and this customer experience score, what does that mean to you in terms of how you're going to take this to the next level?
Yeah, for me, it's 1,046 people who had questions about our registration process that hopefully felt like they were able to get the information that they needed in a timely manner. The dialogue age being 0.4 days, I promise if they would have sent emails, they would not have gotten a response. All of those people would not have gotten a response in an average of 0.4 days, because emails just float out there in kind of a different way. But what I love the most is that customer service score, that of those 1,046, our average score is 7.6 out of 10. And so overall, people are satisfied with the service that they're getting. And I think sometimes, and we'll look at an example in a minute, even when I don't get the answer that I hoped I would get, I still might be satisfied, and I'm thankful that I got a response in the time that I did.
And so on the next slide, I think that this is really imperative here, because when you're launching a new technology or a new platform, you can't expect everything to be perfect, but you got to know where you're starting, and you can't master what you're not measuring. And so I took the screenshot here, and I just kind of love to show that even though you are a 7.6, that is a great customer experience score, but you guys are continuing to climb up that ladder and continuing to provide better customer service month after month after month. And so, I think it was important for you to really kind of also see like where are our service gaps? Where do we need to better provide support? So I wanted to also show the top 3 topics that came in of this data that was showing was help with the online registration, requesting bus service, and what's your student's route number. Is there anything else that you'd want to share about kind of this experience so far?
Yeah, so we looked at some statistics, and the idea about help with online registration. So that made up 50% of our customer service volume. And then 41% of the inquiries were handled via the AI chatbot, which meant it didn't even take one of our staff members answering their question, because we had fed information into the chatbot ahead of time. Then the chatbot was able to immediately answer their question, which is so super fast. And just how fulfilling that that is possible. One of the things that we realized in going through the process of getting the chatbot up and running is then when we start to get the same questions over and over again that the chatbot can't answer, then we can load the chatbot with that content so that the next time that question is asked, it will be answered by the chatbot. And so that was something that was interesting to look at the statistics and just see just how that platform, and not even an interaction with a real life person, helps to meet the needs of people. And I know, like, I use chatbots in my everyday life, right? Whenever I'm going to, ask something about Walgreens or whatever, right? Like, you can get a lot of really good information there. And so I love that is, that was a newer tool for me. It was not something that was available when I was in Leander.
Yeah, and I think that it speaks to kind of what you talked about, the involvement of really the partnership of being able to evolve with the company who's evolving as well too. You've touched on so many great things too about efficiencies and being able to have some self-supported, but how can you reflect for a second, how did this back to school season look different with Let's Talk than it was in 2024?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. So again, this year, my admin assistant was connected to be a part of the phone calls for the transportation team, right? Just somebody else answering phone calls. But funneling all of those inquiries through Let's Talk helps, right? It allows people to see and to understand that we're on it and that we're going to follow up in a very different and intentional way. So I like I think that this sample question is a great one, because it's someone who's asking, can I pay for busing for my kiddo to go to Bergen Elementary? And you'll see there from the transportation department, the answer was, unfortunately, we don't do paid busing for that campus. We only do regular busing for that campus. But if you bounce back over to the left, the feedback score is a 10 for that one, right? So that parent was, even though I'm sure they weren't happy that we couldn't do paid busing for them, they still said, basically, thank you for giving me the information that I was looking for. And so I just really appreciate that we're able to get people feedback in a timely way, and that we know that we're better meeting the needs, because otherwise it's a question in our minds, right? As people receive phone calls or as people answer emails, are we doing a good job with customer service? Yes or no? And I think everybody's doing the very best that they know how to do. But when we start to look at the metrics, then we can improve the services that we're providing to people. The other thing that Let's Talk allows us to do that I specifically am not able to do is to provide support in not only English, but in Spanish and Vietnamese here in Arlington, right? And so I think that that is another critical way that we're able to meet the needs of our diverse community in a different way, instead of them having to use translation services for that.
You're not trilingual, Dr. Cole?
I am not trilingual. I am not trilingual. Yeah. And so this is another just example with the online registration process, right? I think that you can see that dialogue that started, and then how the back and forth works, because you're able to do some behind the scenes communication. So if I don't know the answer, I can reach out behind the scenes to someone to get the information I need. And the parent doesn't see that that's what I'm doing. But then I'm able to answer their question, or to change the owner so that somebody else is better able to answer that question. So it just streamlined the communications instead of a long email thread, right? I mean, that's what we're used to, is email all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bethany, if you could go back one slide, there was a point there that I wanted to make about the transportation. So in the bottom right-hand corner, I remember when I was working with transportation, they had a generic email inbox that was like transportation at Arlington ISD. And that was also a manual process of having to, aggregate where it needs to go to the right people. And so when I'm thinking about these efficiencies for our parents, we also have efficiencies for our staff as well. And so in the bottom right-hand corner, that's kind of a workflow automation that, based on their campus or based on the section of the district that they're in, it's able to automatically route it to the right person who can get a quicker response time. It's not hanging out in an email inbox, because, there was this quote that I heard the other day that was like, if it's not your baby, it's an orphan. So this allows it to go exactly to the right person to make sure that somebody's taking care with it. Okay, so kind of thinking about this, as a former educator, it's always inspiring, like, to see impact with technology to really help a better experience for students, families, and staff. And so I think your pilot really set a high bar for what's possible. And I know you talked about how you've been just getting started off with central office. What strategies did you use to really earn that buy-in across your district and help get everybody on board to make this work so well?
Yeah, I think that starting with senior staff in the very beginning and linking this work to our district priorities really was key, right? Like, people continue to be reminded about why we're doing what we're doing. And then I think having some early adopters who wanted to give it a go and were willing to try some things and maybe fail at some things and try again, right? Having people that had that mindset moving forward, like our transportation department and our enrollment team, was critical, because it also allowed some of us on the back end to see what are some different ways that we might approach things moving forward with other teams. And then coming back and training the entire district. I love the model that we use. So last week, we offered 4 opportunities for people to come for about 45 minutes, and they could pick any of the 4 that we had on the calendar. And we asked them to come together with their team. So like the entire special education team came together, or our research and accountability team came together. We even invited our legal team to come together, right? Let's all learn about what this could look like. There's a picture from one of our trainings. And they then were able to learn a little bit about what can this do. They got to hear about, we've been doing this already in transportation. We had some successes with enrollment. So I think that feels good to people. And then what they're doing now is they're going out and they're thinking about what are all of the different kinds of questions that people might be asking, that then we might want to feed information into a chat bot, or they might appear as buttons then on our district website. And so they're kind of percolating on that now. They're going to get some specific coaching from the Let's Talk team to help them narrow it down. Then we're hoping to do a big district-wide training in November and launch in December district-wide. And so it's an aggressive timeline. But because we were able to start small, I'm super confident that we're going to be able to have a really solid launch, and we will continue to learn. And there is no doubt that our teams are going to say, oh, could we add an additional button for this? Or, oh, I've got more information that I want to provide to the chatbot. Like, those things are going to happen, but that's what we want to have happen. I did have to quell some of the anxiety in the room, because they were like, oh my gosh, it's one more thing that we're going to have to do. And we had to remind them, no, these are people who are reaching out already. And so what we're trying to do is to give them one way to reach out, and it's going to be one communication system for you, rather than they're reaching out in multiple different ways. And so it's not that we're going and waving a flag saying, does anybody have any new questions that we haven't ever answered before? Like, that's not the goal. The goal is for people who are reaching out with questions already, how do we provide them better customer service? And then how do we also use our time well to make sure that we're getting them the answers that they need?
Yeah, that's so wonderful. And that's, common anxiety that I think I hear from other people as well too. And so it's, the volume is not going any different. It's the same amount of volume, but what we're changing is the access. We're just pointing it all through one front door to make it easier on both your stakeholders who are reaching out, but also for your internal staff as well too. So it's not another thing that they have to do. So I really appreciate you kind of sharing this insight here. And we'll give time for our audience to ask some questions, but I have one kind of like last question that I want to ask you as we have a quorum here. So what advice would you give to districts who are interested in implementing a unified service desk approach like you have in Arlington?
Yeah, so again, I do think that linking the work that you're trying to do to the priorities that you have in your district is key. And for us, fostering that service culture is one of the things that is a priority for us. And I think staying connected with that ultimate goal will allow us to see that through. Secondly, that idea about leveraging that real-time data, again, because we are a continuous improvement district, because we want to get better and better at the things that we're doing in our district, Let's Talk provides us with data that we've never had before to improve customer service. We know when we miss the mark, and people are very, happy to give us information on that. And when we start to see those trends, then it allows us to provide professional learning in a specific way, or to reach out to a specific team. Like, we can monitor those things in a way that we've never been able to monitor before. And then third, it's that idea of unifying those operations. So whether people are calling or texting or using the chat bot or emailing or whatever, having all of that kind of funneled through in Let's Talk really allows us to ensure that we're missing fewer messages, and that we have faster response times, and that we have greater confidence that the information that we're providing is the right information. We did kind of have a lesson learned. We had, whenever we started our transportation pilot on our Arlington ISD website, whenever you go to any of our pages, if you scroll down on the left-hand bar, there is a picture of the director or assistant superintendent or chief of that area and their contact information. And so historically, lots of inquiries came to that person because that was the face and the title and the contact information that was prominently displayed on our website. With our transportation pilot, we left our director's picture there, we left his title there, but we took his contact information off because we wanted people to funnel through Let's Talk. And one of our board members actually reached out and said, "Oh, I think it actually got deleted off of the website. Can we add that back?" And we're like, "Actually, we're doing a pilot right now, and this is why it's disappearing." And so that also reminded me that as we're making these shifts and changes, especially as we go district-wide later this fall semester, communicating with our stakeholders, so whether it's our community or our parents or our teachers, about changes that they're going to see in our district website is going to be super important, because we don't want people to think, "Oh no, there's an error and I don't have their phone number anymore." No, we're not doing phone numbers, because now this is going to be a different way that we're going to try to communicate. And so I think that being crystal clear with that information is going to be important as well.
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate you sharing those lesson learns, because it's just those things that you don't think about until you hear from other districts that have gone through it. But I think you're not alone. That I see on other district websites that I look at, that people usually have that contact information, and it's the director, it's the supervisor, and I'm sure that they're over inundated with emails and messages that might get missed or slip through the cracks.
Well, and if I leave my kid's lunchbox on a bus, it is not the director of transportation that needs to help me find that lunchbox again, right? Like, there are other people that should be able to help with that, right? And so what Let's Talk allows us to do is to funnel, missing items directly to the person who can help with missing items.
Yeah, you bet. Get it right in the hands closest to it. Well, I love your experience so far. I'd like to really kind of turn it to the audience and see if there's any questions or further discussion that you guys have. So audience, you can submit those Q&A. This is time for you guys to have, and we'll take that time to address them. Okay. So I think one of the questions that is coming in so far is, have you had any experience from the parents? Like, how have the parent experience? How have they reacted so far? Have you heard any of that?
Yeah, so the only experience I have so far is just from that customer service feedback metric that we can see in Let's Talk. So we have not done any kind of formal surveying or anything along those lines. But I would say from the perspective of the parents and that metric, there is confidence that people feel like they're getting the information that they need. And then I would say from our transportation team and our enrollment team, they feel like they have much better been able to meet the needs of our community because of the platforms that we're using. So I've heard from both ends, though we haven't asked specifically, like we haven't gone out and done any kind of surveying or anything like that.
But you have that real-time feedback from the customer feedback form too, that gives you that pulse check,
That's right.
so to speak. Yeah, I love that. All right, Bethany, is there any others questions that you see are coming in?
I think I see one more here. It looks like they are asking, what professional development or training have you provided for the staff to use Let's Talk?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So with our transportation team, whenever we started our pilot with them, there was a very targeted group of people that we knew were going to be the Let's Talk users that we brought in to participate in professional learning. And really, it was kind of an overview of the program and what it's going to look like. But then we needed them to give us information on what are the different kinds of questions you receive as the transportation team. What is the information that we might need to feed into the chatbot to help people know that they can get information, at any time of the day. And so because they were a part of designing and developing it, they really were able to wrap their minds around how it was going to work. Not everybody on the transportation team is a Let's Talk user. Not everybody on our enrollment team is a Let's Talk user, but we've identified the people who are best able to answer those questions, and they're the ones who are the users. So in Arlington, whenever we do a district-wide rollout in the fall and late fall semester, we are not planning yet to provide professional learning to our campus leaders and our campus staff. We will let them know what we are doing and that Let's Talk is coming, and these are some of the changes that they'll see, but we're not expecting our principals or our receptionists or our registrars on campus to utilize Let's Talk yet. We're going to start at the district level with those district departments. We may end up with some buttons for each of the campuses that, funnels to the district office so that we can help answer questions, because a lot of times people just pick up the phone and call because they don't know who else to reach out to. And what we're hoping is that through the Let's Talk platform, really it's the special education department that needs to help answer that question, or really it's the advanced programs department that needs to help answer that question. It's not really the principal at the campus always that has to answer those questions.
Thank you. We did get one other one, and this was one that you may or may not be able to answer, but it says, does this customer service program integrate well with other apps such as Parent Square?
Yeah, we don't use Parent Square here in Arlington, so I can't speak to that. I've seen it from experience in other districts, but I'm not sure. Hillary or Bethany, do you have any information about that integration?
Yeah, so what I'll say is what we have been integrating with Arlington specifically is with their student information system to be able to have that better response of seeing who is actually an Arlington ISD parent and not somebody coming in and replicating something that's not true. So that is the integration piece of that is live in Arlington. In terms of Parent Square, they play nicely with one another. So Parent Square is directly, great for your parent-teacher communication. But if you have anything of next steps, like you said, if they're getting frustrated at that campus level or they don't know where to go, that's where Arlington can be able to use that use case of a Let's Talk landing page for them to go to get their questions, concerns escalated into the right appropriate stakeholder, and to be able to have visibility into those things that maybe they're getting frustrated or stuck at the Parent Square teacher communication level.